So it looks like the day has come that the media has finally made Christianity look good. But probably not in the way that you're thinking. It's sort of a roundabout way, so just let me explain. Now, I don't know if it's because I haven't been on this earth long enough, or it's simply because it's true, but I have never seen so many people so genuinely confused about what they should believe about all of the things that are going on in the world today. Now, part of this problem comes from the rise of the internet, because the rise of the internet has been both a blessing and a curse to our generation. We now have access to a near unlimited amount of information right at our fingertips 24/7. So if we want to know what's going on in the world, we no longer have to wait to get the newspaper on the porch in the mornings or to wait for the 9 o'clock news at night. Instead, we have access to information within minutes of the event happening, and we have access to that information at any time from almost anywhere. Now, generally speaking, since anybody can post information on the internet for anybody to see, we have almost instant access to anything that we want to learn about. But the problem is people on the internet can also lie. They can tell you stuff that simply isn't true, and they can even flat out lie to you for their own personal benefit. So even though this information age has given us a near infinite amount of information for us whenever we want right at our fingertips, it didn't give us the tools to be able to sift through it to know what's true and what isn't true. But thankfully, we still have the media to save the day, right? I mean, after all, isn't it their job to carefully sort through all of the information surrounding events and to separate fact from fiction so that way we can just have the raw facts? Don't they get paid to carefully ensure that what they're reporting is true before they publish it? Well, if this was true before information became instantaneous, this is no longer the case today. Today, it's more about being first than being right. Not only that, but in such a competitive world, facts just aren't sexy enough. You need something that's going to get people emotionally invested. The more emotionally invested they are into watching your program, obviously, the more money that you're going to make. And the more money that you make, the more power that you have. And the more power that you have, the more ability you have in order to control what gets reported and what doesn't get reported. And finally, if you can control what's being said, then you ultimately have control over what people think. Now we can mix in the fact that the media consists of humans who, like all of us, have a natural bias in order to make their side look great and the other side look bad. The media learned that if you can do this in an emotionally powerful way, then you slowly change the curves where feelings have become more valuable than facts. People will naturally start holding more and more views because of how the views make them feel, not necessarily because they're true or not. People will start becoming more and more emotionally invested into those views, no matter how absurd they might be, and start paying less and less attention to the facts. And once you get people to a certain point, no one is even looking anymore. So this gives you the ability and the room to just get away with flat out lying in order to get views. So ultimately what we have is a problem of accountability. Without sufficient accountability to principles of integrity and accurate reporting, those foundations will inevitably be replaced with a thirst for power and financial gain. Unless you're not very observant, you've probably also realized that in the recent years, the media hasn't really been held to a standard of accurate reporting, but instead, they've been put in a position where they could give us information that only works out in their best interest. But in light of that, this is what made me realize how the media actually made Christianity look better for once. I thought about how in the scriptures we find so many instances of the authors recording events that don't go along with their narratives or their best interest, and instead they actually go against their narratives and best interest. If you think about it, the first Christians, the disciples, they hung out with Jesus all day for 3 years straight, and then they saw him become publicly tortured and crucified. But after 3 days, they believed that they saw him alive again in a healed and glorified body. Now, since they spent so much time with them, this would be a pretty hard thing to get wrong. It's not as if this was a case of mistaken identity or something like that. Now, whether you believe they were right about what they saw or not, that's really beside the point, because they were either being honest or they were lying. And as you already know, people typically don't lie without an incentive to lie. So this might lead you to ask, what would be the incentive for them to lie about what they saw? Now, remember that Christians were a small and persecuted sect who were seen as a threat to the governing officials and the religious majorities of the day. So inventing stories about Jesus obviously wasn't going to get them any money or power or sex or anything else that this world had to offer. The only thing that they had to look forward to for spreading their message was inevitable persecution and likely death. So when it comes to the early disciples, not only was it not in their best interest to spread the message, but spreading the message actually worked against their best interest. There simply wasn't any possibility of them gaining any power or financial gain, as is the case for the journalists today. This is yet another thing that can add confidence to the fact that what we're reading in the Gospels is actually reporting that's true rather than something that was invented out of some sort of selfish benefit. So all in all, this has shown me how the media has made Christianity look even better today in a world full of deceit and lies. But the next time someone tells you that the first Christians and the disciples invented Christianity for some sort of personal gain, what are you going to say? What do you mean?